My name is Liz Harrison. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be speaking today about designing for today's hybrid delivery. So many of us are going back and forth between the real world and the online world as we ride these pandemic waves. So, what I'm sharing here today is intended to help you and support you and not add anything more to your plate. Ideally, the session will take things off of your plate and hopefully help you sort through what might feel a bit extraneous at this stage. And I have shared some materials for free on my Teachers Pay Teachers page as well as through the Mighty Peace servers. So please feel free to take advantage of those and make those your own. Knowledge that I'm sharing in this presentation has been hard won. To understand where I'm coming from, I want to share with you a little bit of context. The lockdown was very hard. I have never had such a challenging time. I live on my own. My family lives far, far away, 12 hours in both directions. People spread all over the place. And even though I have a great community in the city that I live in, it was definitely a lot less visible in those times of separation and lockdown. So as I entered this year, I was still in some of that muck and mired down from some of those things that had happened. I had never had to ask for help in the ways that I had to ask for help this year, and that was really challenging. Even though I know, coming towards the lessons in the long run, I can see the growth that happened from that, but it didn't make it less hard, and I felt like I was still walking wounded in a lot of ways in September. So one of the things that I had shift my perspective were the students. When they came back, everybody was afraid. Everybody was worried that we were holding them accountable for what they did or didn't do in the lockdown. That was definitely not my jam. And so for them, I could see that when we sort of released them from some of those things that they were stressing out about, there was definitely a huge shift. And we started to have fun at school. What a concept, right? So for me, I still, even though good things were happening around me, I was struggling to focus and look for the good. At an interesting chiropractor appointment in which I complained the whole time. And by the end, I realized I had this moment of realization of what I sounded like. And I realized that the person that I appeared to be and the words that I was saying were not me. They were not my perspectives. They were coming from this very fear-based place. And so, it was a risk for me to decide that this year was going to be okay, even with the masking, even with the distancing, even with all the cleaning and all this uncertainty and, fear. And so when I had that realization, it changed what I was looking for. So, one of the things that I've dug into in this transition to pandemic life is the coaching mindset. So, what are the stories that we're telling ourselves about our lives? How are they serving us or not serving us? And what do they allow us to focus on or look for? So, this is where some of the shift came from me. I went backwards a little bit and remembered some of the values work that I had done with my department. And Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, if you haven't taken a look, she's got an excellent process and approach and a very simple practice in which you start with a huge list of personal values and then you eliminate. So it might be crossing off half to start out with, but the point is to get down to two and two only, because as they say, I can't remember who, but as people say, if you have more than two priorities, you have no priorities. And so two priorities is the goal. And for me, my priorities, which I had learned about myself pre-pandemic, were community and culture. It's important to me to build groups that are connected and supportive of each other. I have been on the outside of groups, I have been on the inside of groups, and I have been brought into groups with different places that I've lived over my life. And I can feel the difference when you are in a room or a classroom where a community exists versus where it does not, or it's still in the inception stages. So I definitely wanted to bring that sense of collective connectedness to my classes. And culture is my other value. So how do we do things? How do we feel with the way that we do things? How do things work around here? That's a key thing for me generally in the best of times, but in the worst of times, I really was able to sort of hyper focus in and decide what was the most important. Did it align with these two values? Any choice that I made in my classroom and with my students was filtered through these two lenses. And so that really helped me decide what's the most important thing here and what can I let go of. So the third piece is the maverick culture. the school that I teach at, we are the Mavericks, and we take risks, we help each other, we support each other. Our three pillars are to connect, to belong, and to celebrate. And so those are other lenses that I use as I'm thinking about the things that are the most important and where we should spend our time. No one of those is more important than the other, although I have to say this year, celebrate for me has been huge. Celebrate accomplishments, celebrate connections, celebrate when we're together, when we return to be together again. Celebration is something that might feel a bit hard to find right now, especially because we've got so many rules about you can't have weddings or funerals even together. So these times of happiness and grief that we gather are off the table. So as much as I can, where I can, when I can, it's something that I'm looking for and looking to build into what I do with students. All right. So the last thing that's on this slide, you'll see there's a graphic. Part of my commitment to community and culture is coming from a school that I did a practicum in my very early student teaching, and they followed the Seattle Pike Place Market fish philosophy. So if you haven't heard of it, imagine in Seattle, it's this fish market, and your job all day is to throw fish, slimy, smelly fish, well, probably not smelly, but slimy fish back and forth, and they're frozen, and it's cold, and it's hard work, and it's scaly and, gross. But if you go there, it's a huge tourist attraction because they have so much fun. They make it fun. They play. They toss the fish. They make them talk. They do all kinds of performative things for the crowds that now gather to watch this fun job. A crazy, crazy thing because, who wants to come and see the fish market? And yet they've found a way to really make it special and make it worth the time. So these are the four pieces of their philosophy that I try to use and frame the choices and actions that I'm making. I'm always going back to my community and culture values, but these align with them so beautifully. So play is going to save us this year. We need play like never before. Learning as play actually creates a lot more success, and you can make leaps and bounds in ways that you might normally take a lot of time to get that flex and build that muscle. So play can be awesome, very experimental for sure. Making their day, this does not have to be big. This can be a small gesture or remembering a student's name who's behind a mask who, nobody has said hi to them that day. One of the most important things that I did in my day this year was to connect with a student in my last class of the day who lost a parent to cancer just as the pandemic was starting up. So that on top of moving to a new city, on top of masks and not having a lot of connections in the school that were positive and going forward and feeling like they were giving support, that was the most important thing I did in the day. And it was about making their day and being there. Um, so be there. When you're there, be present. I feel like this year now I'm living more in the moment than I ever have before. And it's good. It's a good thing. I mean, we're not done planning for the future, but today is now, and we might as well enjoy it because it could be another lockdown tomorrow where we might, run out of the chocolate stash if we're in lockdown now. So you might as well enjoy the day.